Welcome to another episode of Hog Roundup with ESPN Arkansas's Tye Richardson. Before we begin, as always, Courtney Mims will take my head off if I don't tell you to like the video and subscribe to the channel as well. We got to keep bringing Tye on every Friday. Tye, ever since we've started doing this, it's been pretty much nonstop negativity. Pretty much nothing's gone right for the Razorbacks outside of, we previewed some baseball, so that was nice, Looking forward to the spring. But we come now on a Friday after Arkansas gets SEC win number one against Georgia. 68-65, the Razorbacks take down the Bulldogs. It wasn't exactly a clinic offensively, but Arkansas does get it done and gets SEC win number one under Coach Cal. What were your thoughts after that one?
Man, you got to muck it up with this
Yeah.
team. That's how they're going to have to win. 8 guys. Curious if any other player cracks that rotation moving forward, but that's the formula. And not every ref crew is going to call it that way. Arkansas got the benefit of a lot of calls, Jacob, and we'll see what they'll try and do against Oklahoma tomorrow. Really, the first time you get a chance, you get your crack at the Sooners since they joined the SEC.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird feel with that one. We were talking in the office just from the standpoint that you play them in Tulsa the last 3 years, so it doesn't really feel like it's an unfamiliar opponent, but at the same time, it is SEC meeting number one between these two teams. Border
Yeah.
rivals, a lot to be made about, maybe if that potentially could transform into a bit more of a rivalry moving forward. And, Oklahoma is just a classic example of the strength of the SEC in terms of their record going in. They were number 12 or number 13 going into SEC play, and they're 1-4, but they're also coming off SEC win number one against South Carolina. A team that can beat you in a lot of different ways. And again, a game that Arkansas cannot afford to not play its best in.
Yeah, Arkansas, like you said, similar to Oklahoma, the fact that both teams have one SEC win. Oklahoma has that week-long stretch, and until they play the Razorbacks tomorrow, the Razorbacks get the benefit of that next week playing before they play Kentucky. We saw last season, SEC football didn't always help teams. I'm curious how in basketball if we see any differences, any changes, or just any trends at all with the bye, but. This is not just a team that Arkansas is going to get their doors blown off against. I expect it to be a close game, and like a couple other games this season, Arkansas have a chance to win. Just depends on if someone can get going offensively, which, Jacob, they really didn't have anyone the other night. They just knocked out a bunch of free throws.
Yeah, it was, I think, 34 free throw attempts for Arkansas.
Yep.
It was, I don't even know if you call that bully ball. It was just get to the free throw line and hope. I think you make a good point about the standpoint that, different referee crews aren't going to call the game the same way for Arkansas, and that's where you're going to need somebody else offensively to step up. And it wasn't a secret, right? You lose your best shot creator in Boogie Fland. Where does the offense kind of go from there? And I think understandably, a lot of people are really excited about the first SEC win, but the whole, 3 of 23 from three, shooting what they did from the field overall, I think 18 for 58. I got it pulled up right here. That's not exactly a sustainable way to win as well. So, I think I've asked you this every single time that we've done this show, but where does Arkansas turn offensively tomorrow against Oklahoma to try to find a spark and keep this thing going?
I keep saying
question. So
yeah, I keep saying John L. Davis, hoping it'll be right one of these days. And I know John L. had a good first half against LSU. I don't know how you felt, but those threes and those attempts that he took the other night when he was 1 for 10, a lot of them looked in. They just hit the back rim.
Yeah.
It's not like he was airballing it or anything like that. So I know he's been frustrated. The coaching staff's frustrated because I know that he expects more out of himself than the rest of them. At some point, that's got to come true. I would say if you're looking for a player that you have to rely on, it's Adu Thero, who got his fourth double-double, I think, of the season earlier this week. Albeit I think it was just 11 shot attempts, 5 of 11. I think the majority of the damage was done at the free throw line. Carter Knox has shown some ability, the true freshman. Again, it's got to be a committee thing because I don't think any of these guys are going to be 25, 20-point scorers a night. So you're just hoping that, like the other night, they get to the free throw line and not just get to the free throw line, but they haven't been a good shooting team. They were like around 200 free throw percentage-wise. They knocked down 29 of those 34 attempts, Jacob, 85%. Man, if they shoot like that, they're going to be in a lot of close ball games with the chance to win.
Yeah, Carter Knox is funny because I think he kind of he exemplified the whole offensive strategy. It was going again back to this box score. He was 1 of 5 from the field, but 11 of 13 from the free throw line. So you get to the charity stripe, you give yourself an opportunity, right? And it's like you were saying with Arkansas, you shoot 34 times and you make 29, that's going to put you in a pretty good spot. It's just the key for Arkansas is finding some other offensive options as well. And I thought it was interesting today, assistant coach Chuck Martin, he was talking about John L. Davis like you're describing, and he complimented his confidence, and I know that makes some people's eyes roll, right? When you go 1 of 10 from three and 3 of 14 overall. But it is at least, if you're searching for positives in his kind of lane, it is a different version of John L than we've seen in terms of standing in the corner and waiting for things to come to him and shooting 3 times in one night and not really seeing anything go down. He was at least hunting his shot. You hope that those just then turn into buckets moving forward.
And not to get too technical, but they were running a lot of floppy action
Yes.
for him, setting screens, and he was running off of them, getting a chance to either drive or get an open look. And he sprung open a couple times, just wasn't able to knock it down. So, as you just mentioned, rather than sit in the corner and wait on the basketball, he was at least involved in being off the ball and running. Hopefully, we'll see more of that tomorrow against the Sooners. And I want him to keep shooting. I mean, I listened to Cal in the post game with the media and on his radio show, and he was just like, we wanted him to shoot. Like he gets animated like that. So it's not like he was mad at the shot selection. It'd be different if he was just jacking them from 35, taking horrible shots. They weren't bad shots.
No.
They didn't go in, man.
Yeah. And I think people get tired because, specifically with John L, it's like a broken record when you talk about what he did last year.
Yeah.
It's worth mentioning that, again, this isn't a guy that's just been handed an extra offensive load and he's just chucking shots. Like, he shot 40% on volume from three a year ago. Like, it's in the guy. He can do this. It's just a matter
Yeah.
of somehow finding the touch that he had a year ago. Also another thing to think about too is just in terms of sharing the ball where this team goes from an offensive standpoint, that Boogie Flam was your big assist guy, right? And he's dishing out. He's almost leading all freshmen in the entire country in assists. And, again, Arkansas didn't make a vast ton of buckets on Wednesday. They made 18 total field goals, only 7 assists. And sometimes that stuff's overrated. It doesn't, you don't need an assist on every single field goal, but it does
Mm-hmm.
have at least some sort of sign to how your offense is moving and sharing the ball. That's also something Arkansas is going to have to do against Oklahoma as well.
Absolutely. You've seen it times this season. They do share the basketball with Boogie being out, their
Yeah.
biggest assist leader. And the thing about Boogie is, like, Boogie couldn't shoot during SEC play, but he wouldn't turn the ball over.
No, not at all.
He had I think a 4 or 5 to 1 assist to turnover ratio, which is unheard of as a true freshman. So that was an area he really excelled. Just again, wasn't the best of shooters. So they need offense. They need ball movement. I know DJ's kind of taking over that point guard role. John L, a little bit of Billy Richmond as well. So once they start feeling what the different roles look like, I think you're going to start seeing the ball move a little bit more. But after this game against Oklahoma, I mean, you think about Kentucky, Alabama, Auburn. I mean, the schedule is just
Better
it's
get this
brutal,
one.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like this is one you desperately need tomorrow night, Jacob.
Yeah, and again, it's not about, I saw some people laughing saying, is this team really going to rope us back in and all that stuff? And again, you do have to take this one game at a time. But similar to, not to bring up old wounds, but I think we said this about the LSU game where, Oklahoma's a very talented team. They've got a very good coach. So is everybody else in the SEC. I mean, they're 1-4. So I mean, this
Yep.
is a game at home that you need to win because you know what's on deck. I don't care that you have a week off. You got to go to Rupp and play, Kentucky, and then it's like you said, you have Alabama following that. You got to match up with Texas. That's the SEC. So this is a game that Arkansas just kind of plain and simple. You have to win it, just from the standpoint that if you're going to get your wins, where else are you going to find them?
Yeah, and if you start looking at the rest of the schedule, there are games that are tough, like we alluded to, but then there's some games you're like, I think they can win that. I mean, I think they can beat Vanderbilt. I think South Carolina's on there. There's some games that you're like, yeah, they can go win that.
Yeah.
Not and I mean, I was unaware of this until they said on the television broadcast. Arkansas technically was still a quad one opportunity for Georgia this week.
Yeah.
So even teams that you don't think highly of, as just a casual basketball fan, you might go to their arena and get a quad one win,
Yeah.
which is just like when it comes to Arkansas's NCAA tournament discussion, which is still way out there based on their 1-5 start. That's huge. That might not, like years ago when they had different um, like different ways to measure how someone makes a tournament with the net and the new quad ranking system the last few years. That might change it and it'd be advantage for Arkansas.
Yeah, it was something we were also talking about in that regard where, Arkansas's non-con, just from a scheduling standpoint and then from how they performed, the Michigan win was great. They fell to Baylor and Illinois and you kind of left that scratch in your head and you said, what's the big takeaway from that? And, clearly the team hadn't been challenged with how they performed early on in SEC play. But the one positive that you could take away from that is, like you mentioned, they avoided the catastrophic loss, which then the backside of that is there is no catastrophic loss in the SEC. Every single game is a quad one or quad two opportunity. And so, again, we are extrapolating a way out when you talk about an NCAA tournament team with the Arkansas Razorbacks. But that's just the fact is that you're going to have quad one, quad two over and over and over again. Arkansas is going to have its chances. It just depends on if this team takes them.
Yeah, and like you said, you've been hammering the point since we came on, Jacob, about this Oklahoma game. You're exactly right. I mean, you can't miss on that. You can't start out 1-6. I mean, 2-5 is not great either, but to beat 1-6, and and maybe I shouldn't even mention NCAA tournament, but it is again. I know it's hard to fathom based on this beginning of conference play, but technically it's still possible. Now that could change in 2 weeks, and they could just be completely eliminated. I guess they're never truly eliminated because what happens in Nashville. So by the way, there's like 4 games I think the first day now on Wednesday when there just used to be two, just because of the two added
Yeah.
teams. So the tournament could get a little more interesting than maybe you're used to in Nashville, Tennessee at Bridgestone Arena.
That would be crazy with the new additions, obviously, with the SEC. I don't even know. Have you looked? I don't even know. I'm taking it a separate place here. Have you mathematically looked at how is the Big Ten tournament doing it? Do you know with 18 teams? How are they even making that work?
Yeah, I'm gonna guess. So the SEC teams, obviously on Friday, they
Yeah.
get the four with the bye. So in my head, does that mean just like two teams get a bye and they play everyone else, or did they give 6 teams a bye and then
Uh,
that is that and the where's the Big Ten tournament? Is that in Indy? Where do
Indy.
they play?
Yeah.
They do play that in Indy, and
I mean, that's 18 teams. That's
yeah,
oh, whatever. Point is, Arkansas must win. I think. Well, I mean,
yeah.
again, everything is relative
The
when it comes to
cliches,
must
toss
win.
them out,
Yeah,
toss them
let's just
out.
put them all out there. One game at a time for this Arkansas team. They got to take care of business against Oklahoma. It just offensively shooting 23% from three through 6 games. So you got to find the rhythm from beyond the arc, and that goes for pretty much the whole team. Quickly, I wanted to get some thoughts on baseball from you. 3 scrimmages this weekend for DVH's squad, one going on right about now, I believe, actually, over at Baum Walker.
Mhm.
Where is just your feel in general on this team? I know you asked me the same thing last week. How you feeling about this year's group and what this team potentially could do?
I was talking to a former pitcher about this year, and he had a chance to speak with someone I think on staff, and I mean they're excited. You got some pitchers you like. You got Gackle, reliable. Diggs is back.
Mm,
He's kind of steady Eddie. I know he played injury plagued last year. Hopefully he's not dealing with something like that again this season. There's a lot of newcomers, and that's just how it is now in today's age of college sports. And you just think about SEC dominance these last 4 years between Mississippi State, Ole Miss, LSU, Tennessee. I mean, are we going to see a fifth straight SEC champion? And if you look like beyond that, those last 4 years, I mean, there's several others. There's Vanderbilt,
yep.
there's South Carolina, there's Florida. Now, those haven't all been consecutively. There's, I think, Coastal and a few other teams
Mhm.
here and there got in and won national championships. But the SEC continues to produce, and that's what I'm wondering. Does the streak continue with another different team?
Yeah.
Hopefully, one that's wearing cardinal and white in Omaha finally takes it. That's the knock on wood approach that we're taking on this with Jacob.
Knock on wood, knock on wood. And again, it's not the same deal as softball's ridiculous with the new additions of Texas and
Yeah.
Oklahoma. I mean, they
Whew.
played in the national championship last year. It's not quite the same deal, but I mean, still, Texas has obviously shown the capability to compete in the past couple of years. So now it gets more difficult as well for Arkansas. And again, there's a lot to get to before you get to May, but that stretch that Arkansas goes on with those weekend series to finish the year, when you have A&M coming to Fayetteville, you have Tennessee to
Yep.
finish the year, you have LSU in the month of May. Arkansas better be healthy they better be playing their best baseball because May is going to test this team. I know SEC always does, but in a way that, I mean, it's going to be serious come May for this team, speaking to the strength of the SEC, like you said.
Yeah, and you mentioned the schedule, so it's always fun to look ahead
Yeah.
and see who you're playing. Like the plan for us was to go to Lexington next
Mm.
week, and because of the team start, and it hasn't drummed up the same excitement. So we're not going to be there, hoping they still come through. But you mentioned Baton Rouge, baseball
Mhm.
trip in Baton Rouge is in the works. You mentioned the two marquee home series. I mean, Arkansas's got it loaded. Remember when DVH was at Squatters Club,
Yeah.
I think last year, and was like, I think we're playing two orange teams with T's on their hats. I don't know. And he's like, I'm paraphrasing what he said,
Yeah.
but people were like, oh man, Texas and Tennessee's coming in here, which is awesome. And then you spoke to the prowess of that in both Oklahoma and Texas. So Texas, I think, is number one in D1 baseball softball
Mhm.
rankings, and then Oklahoma's top three or
They're
four. And
3. Yep.
yeah, and they're always again what five
Mhm.
straight national championships, whatever it is. I mean, with Arkansas basketball not doing what we thought they would so far this season, Oklahoma's here 13th, 14th, and 15th at
Mm.
Bogle Park. We've seen high attendance numbers before. I can't imagine that won't break every attendance record that's been broken, because what will happen is not only you get those rabid Arkansas softball fans, Jacob, but Oklahoma, all of them from Kingdom Come will come
Mhm.
over too. So that, I mean, the berm and everything else, that place is going to be insane that weekend.
Yeah, attendance numbers have exploded over the past couple of years, obviously with what Coach Teifel has done with that program. But I thought the same thing as well because and I'm sure they did this intentionally. They try as much as possible not to have baseball and softball here the same weekend. But I think it's Ole Miss. I can't remember off the top of my head, but baseball's on the road. I mean, it is going to be
Oh wow,
all eyes on softball, which is going to be
wow.
pretty special. And I think that place is going to be full. In a way that we really haven't seen it, and again, I think just from a just softball in general perspective. I mean, you come out and you support the Razorbacks, and and you hope they pull the upset in a big SEC matchup. But again, like when you just it's a dynasty. It's 4 straight, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a special opportunity and a dangerous one for Arkansas to have
Yeah.
on the softball schedule. Both baseball and softball, lots to be excited about. Hey, quickly before I let you go, we got to talk college football. Um, it turns out I didn't really pay attention on Monday, but it turns out Ohio State came away with a national championship. Congrats to them. Starved fan base over there in Columbus. They haven't had much
Starved.
success, Feel really bad for them. Glad they finally came around and got it. What were your impressions of the college football playoff overall? How'd you enjoy it all? And season ends 52 days after the regular season does, or whatever it was. Something crazy.
So that's been a huge talking point. One, in terms of the game itself, I know Marcus Freeman would love to go back on that fake punt and the missed field goal. And
Mm.
the missed field goal is not his fault. Peter missed it. He's been unbelievable all season, and then does that, kind of inexplicable. But I mean, if not for that, what, 3rd and 10 to Jeremiah Smith, that's a completely, well, that might be a different ball game. I mean, we
Third and
might be
11,
talking about,
not that I
yeah, third
remember
and
or anything.
11. Yeah. So I think, listen, Notre Dame's got a really good program under Freeman. He's got that thing humming 3 years, and hopefully he keeps it
Mm.
going. I mean, I've admired him from afar and got a chance to go south. And obviously, in terms of college football overall, I don't get this like lapse fatigue.
Mm.
To me, it's still intriguing, even
Yeah.
almost 2 months after the season. I would have thrown the national championship if I was Bill Hancock and he's not. I apologize. He's not even. All right, he's either taking retirement or he's about to. Maybe it's February this year. But I would slap that championship game on this Saturday night, like
Mm.
where you have conference championship. Here's why: college basketball doesn't hold a candle to college football.
Yeah.
And I know people say that, oh, well, it's too late, blah, blah, blah. No, it's a Saturday night
Mm.
in January. What else are you doing on a Saturday night? There's not like an event or something this weekend. You've got conference, so you're still got football centric,
Mm.
and you might say, well, I'm NFL skewed. No, you're football skewed. Like you can still have the best of both worlds. To me, this is a better weekend than Super Bowl Sunday. Why not take advantage of
Yeah.
that football hype and slap your championship game on Saturday night and give your teams a week and a half or a week and 5 days rest? That's, again, not everyone's a fan of that. That's what I would do in this situation, Jacob.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, and I think there's a wide disagreement on how extended the season is, right? But I think
Yeah.
no matter which end of the spectrum you fall on that, if you're on the Tye Richardson side of things where you don't get the fatigue or you're like, hey, man, we need to play this on New Year's Day, I think where all people can agree is the whole we're going to play this on Monday night because it's the only time we can slot this. That makes no sense to your point, right?
Hmm.
And so, I think college football just has to find, and there was a couple reports that came, and it's like, it's amazing that it has taken so long for this to be a thing. A couple reports came out that, finally it seems like Goodell is going to work with college football to help with scheduling and stuff like that. And it's pretty amazing it's taken that long. Um, but I think that just would be better overall. When you talk about playing the game on Monday, I mean, it was the inauguration, it was the end of a holiday weekend. You saw
Yes.
it bear out in the numbers in terms of you had two massive brands, and it was just not
Hmm.
that highly watched as a college football playoff game. I think that's interesting. Shifting gears for 1 second, I've been workshopping a theory. I want to test it
Let's
out on
go.
you. All right. So you
Bring
talked
it.
about you talked about the fatigue, right, for college football in general. On the same note, something that I don't really get is there's been, just ever since NIL and the transfer portal has come out, there's been an overwhelming, pessimism that this is going to kill the sport and that this is going to take college football, it's going to put it in the dump, and it's not going to be anything like we've known forever. All right. And so again, I understand where people are coming from that. It doesn't look like college football from 20 years ago. But if you look at the teams that have had success, this was my big takeaway from, gosh, I was about to say Saturday, from Monday, when the Buckeyes took it home playing a Notre Dame team. What is the two things, or what is something that Michigan last year, Ohio State this year, and Notre Dame all had in common? And it was that, yes, they used the portal, right? They used the portal, but the vast majority, there was this misconception that, Ohio State was a $20 million team that was full of mercenaries across the board and that they're the new evil empire of college football because they bought their way to a national championship. And they spent a lot of money. There's no lying on that front. But Michigan and Ohio State and Notre Dame to a degree as well, what they did was they used the vast majority of their money to incentivize players to come back and give it another
Yeah.
go. And so
Hmm.
the majority of the NIL funds that they used were for veterans that had been with the program for multiple years that could have been mid-round NFL draft picks, and instead they made it worth their while to come back. So they built their team around those guys, and then yeah, you'd be crazy if you had the opportunity to get Caleb Downs and you don't go do that as well. Notre Dame got Riley Leonard as well. Well, how I'm not here to say that they didn't use the portal to grab new guys. The point that I'm making is there's this idea that the NIL and the transfer portal is, killing college athletics. And there are a lot of really bad aspects about it. There are a lot of aspects that need to be curtailed, that need to be changed to make this thing a lot more ethical, to make it work towards the benefit of college athletes, the fans, all of it. I'm not here to say it's all good. My point is sports in general, and specifically college athletics, it's a copycat game, right? You do what somebody else did because they won. That's just how it's always been. And so, sure, we've seen, right, teams go full mercenary style. We've seen it in college basketball, we've seen it in college football. And for the vast majority, you can't really find a spot where that's worked. Texas A&M buys the best recruiting class of all time in 2022. Jimbo gets fired a couple years later. All those guys transfer out. Ole Miss gets the best transfer portal class of all time, and they lose a couple games along the way. They don't even make the college football playoff. You and I talked about it from a college basketball perspective. It sucks, but the Razorbacks, Kansas State and Indiana, spent more in NIL and on transfer portal acquisitions than anybody in the entire country. How's that working out for
that,
those
that
three teams, right?
that
And
may
so,
have got brought up with me and Evan.
yeah, yeah. So it's like you look at it, right, and it's a copycat league. And the point and the reason that I bring all this up is there's an idea that it's ruining college football and it's ruining everything that makes this sport great. But in fact, when you look at Michigan and you look at Ohio State and you look at Notre Dame, those are teams built around players that got them there, right? That
Yeah.
veterans that have been involved with the program for a long while, they use the portal to fill up some holes as well. That's what college football is meant to be, right? You're keeping guys around and you're building a culture centered around players that have been there for a while. That was long-winded, but that's my theory. That's what I've been workshopping, and I guess I just don't really get where all of the I understand people being upset. Not everything is good about this. There's a lot of really, really bad, but at the same time, I think that you're seeing that the same things that have always won in college football are still winning. They're just being gone about in a different way. And bit by bit, I think people are going to see that the way to do it is to supplant in the portal and to pay the guys and build a culture that have been with you for a long time.
Mhm.
That was my
Cam
takeaway.
Ball. No, I agree. Cam Ball back.
Yeah.
Think about Xavier Sorey back. Those are two guys I would guess would be coveted elsewhere or the National
Mhm.
Football League. Landon Jackson came back this past year. He had a chance to go to the NFL. So no, you said it all. I have nothing to add to that eloquent, thought out statement, Jacob.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting because Coach Pittman said that in his first press conference after the
Yeah,
season ended, where he said, "I'm going to have meetings with these guys," and he was very candid about that. And he said, "We are going to prioritize bringing back guys before we go out and find the rest." Right? And again,
mm-hmm.
people had their panic and had their worry, and rightfully so, when 30 guys enter the portal, but he was candid about that as well. Said, we had to make tough decisions, and we'll see ultimately where that leads the Razorbacks. But I do think that's the proper way to go about it. And I don't really prescribe by the theory of, I guess I'm just looking at it from the perspective of this stuff isn't going away. And I still think that the right aspects are winning, right? And
Yeah.
people are going to do what wins at every single level. I don't know.
I again, it's hard to add anything to that. I wholeheartedly agree, brother.
All right. Well, I'm rambling. We're going to let you get out of here. That's going to do it for this week's Hog Roundup with Tye Richardson. That is Tye Richardson. I'm Jacob Morris. We'll be back to talk to you next week.